and social issues. And for me, that's a fantastic opportunity.
The relationship that a consumer has with a brand needs to be much more direct. It can't be mediated through a third party. And that means that we have to reconsider how brand teams work, about how a brand chooses to communicate.
Unilever's been rolling out its Sustainable Living Plan over the last year, and I think people are now beginning to get their heads around what this really means. It isn't just about Unilever's own direct impacts, but about the impacts that the consumer causes when it uses the product. And this provides a phenomenal opportunity to engage through the brands with consumers in a completely different way. That kind of creativity, empowering consumers rather than preaching at them, is precisely the challenge that lies ahead now.
What I think an organisation like Unilever needs to be able to do is be very fleet of foot, and that means lots of experimentation. It means striking alliances with lots of different types of organisations and partnerships. We need to be aligning the different brand teams so that actually there's much more conversation about the experimentation that's being done.
Global brands have a huge influence on people's lives. It may not always be completely explicit, it may sometimes be undercurrents, as it were, rather than big mainstream messaging. But there's no doubt that the impact they can have on people's lives and the way they can help them to consume and live differently is enormous.
Well, I think, Michael, that pretty much said it. I think the 3 or 4 really big global trends. The first one, I think, the most exciting one, according to me, is the shift of the economic center of gravity towards the emerging markets. And, you know, we've been talking about this for a while. It's taken a little while coming, but this is irreversible. So if you look at just the sheer audacity of numbers, and as marketeers, I know all of us love talking about follow the people, follow the money. 85% of the world lives here in the developing markets. The entire population growth is going to be here, and 90% of the economic growth is forecast now to come really from the developing and emerging markets. And this really makes it exciting. And from a consumer goods business, the fact is that by 2020, you'll have as many people living in the developing world as you have the population of the world. So I like to make it very simple. We are the world. And if you look at it from that point of view, 2 billion people are going to move up and be better off than they are today. But 2 billion people will still be at the bottom of the pyramid, and we can talk a little bit about that. But I find this really exciting, and Asia is going to be at the center of it. Asia is going to be the largest consumer bloc, significantly ahead of North America, and just behind North America and Europe put together in 10 to 15 years' time. So that's the exciting bit. The second bit is, you saw on the video, is sustainable living and sustainability. Because the way growth is happening, we need 3 planets. And I think all of us know we don't have 3 planets. So how do companies kind of change business models? How do brands play a role in this? And I think that's the second trend. And the third big trend is digitization. And I think everyone talks about it. We've got 2 billion people who are connected. It's going to change the way we manage brands and we manage businesses. I think those are the 3 big trends going on.
You know, it's interesting. Certainly when you think of the emerging markets, as you put it, you instantly think of Unilever having such a strong presence in that, and that started years ago. So how does a company, what are the business implications of that? You've had many years of investing in those markets, and you really see it firsthand. But what are the overall business implications of that?
I think, you know, if you have to kind of bottle it, some of the learnings that we've had as a company is not very different from, I'm sure, a lot of people in this audience have had running their businesses here. We've been in India now for 100 years. Right. And that's not a rounded number, by the way. It has been 100 years. We started with brands at the end of it. We started with Sunlight, and we started with Lifebuoy. I think the few lessons about operating in developing markets and operating specifically in India, the first one is what I call straddling the pyramid. there is not one India. There are many, many Indias. And how do you ensure that you are able to cover different consumer segments and different price points to make sure that you're able to meet the needs of a large number of very heterogeneous consumers? I think that's number one. The second bit that I think is important is in markets like India, you are not competing for market share all the time. You're competing for what I call non-consumption. The biggest opportunity is market development, competing for non-consumption. And I think that's the second big mindset that you have to change when you operate here. And the third bit is affordability and accessibility. I mean, everyone talks about it, but I can tell you half our business in many, many categories comes really from products that sell at under 10 cents. Okay, and in some cases at 2 and 5 cents. So the question really is, how do you create that affordability that will drive consumers into your portfolio, into your categories, but at the same time make money doing it? And I think that is where this whole idea of developing business models that are equivalent of reverse engineering. You start with what the consumer wants to pay, and then say, okay, if that's what she wants to pay, let me give it to her at that price, and then find a way of making money on it. I'll give you a classic example. When we started our hair business, the shampoo business, many, many years ago, I'm talking about 25 years ago, the price of a shampoo sachet used to be 2 rupees at that time when we launched it. Why? Because the pricing was cost plus margin equal to price. The second logic was, if you buy a bottle, you get a cheaper price. If you buy a sachet, you've got to pay a little more. Wrong. The market didn't take off. And finally, we went to the consumer and said, what's the problem? They wanted to pay 1 rupee for it, not 2 rupees. So we said, okay, why don't we sell it at 1 rupee and find a way. You know, these are brands like some of the brands that you manage for us here, Clinic Plus, Sunsilk, and so on. And we said, okay, we're going to sell it at 1 rupee. And we reverse engineered it. And I'll give you the importance of consumer insights in markets like these. We discovered that we were using formulations here which had high conditioning and therefore high cost, when actually the consumer has a habit of oiling their hair. Okay? And that inevitably is the best conditioner you can use. And then all they want is to wash off a lot of that and not add more to it. So what we did is we reverse engineered the formulations. We got a win, better product at a lower price, and then we created a whole model of creating the biggest sachet manufacturing plants in India and drove the cost down. And the rest is history. So market development is really, really critical. Affordability is one. But India is changing. And the beauty of India now is, I call it the paradox of opportunities. In fact, now there is an opportunity at the top end, premiumization. So affordability, premiumization, you've got to be very schizophrenic in this market. And the last bit that I think is important is accessibility. This is a big country. And the ability to reach consumers where they are is mission critical. So I think those are some of the lessons. And the last bit, which I'm sure everyone here will agree, is the importance of having the right talent. People who understand consumers. And that's really important too.
Well, this isn't a leading question, but maybe it is. So how do you mentioned all the different consumers, all the different markets, and all the different media that are out there and so on. So how do you market to the consumer in that kind of environment?
Not easy, but maybe I'll ask you that question. Right. But I think the first thing is you've got to remember that when you talk about straddling the pyramid, even in media terms, in terms of reach, you have to find different ways of reaching different consumers. We have a situation where we've got 80 million people on the internet, but we've got 300 million people that live in media dark, pockets of India. And you have to find ways of addressing each of these kind of people. I think the most important thing is that you have to recognize that that India is leapfrogging here. There are 700-800 million mobile phones, for example.
Right.
The question is, everyone talks about it, but are we really, really beginning to understand the power of using mobile phones in terms of marketing our brands to urban and rural? Okay. The second bit is digitization. And I think digitization is going to change the world the way the mobile phone changed the world, faster than we think. 80 million internet users are nothing. If you look at China, for example, I mean, you have a penetration of the internet that is now 30 and 40%. That's going to happen here because everyone will have access to it. And the question is, how do you deal with a medium where, in fact, you have no control over the content? The consumer really creates the content. I think there is a lot we can learn as a market from what's going on in the rest of the world, because the future is being played out somewhere, and we better learn that quickly.
You know, the good part of the digital world, if you will, is it does provide a tremendous amount of insight in terms of who the consumer is, when they want to be contacted, what are they looking for. So if we can leverage that kind of information in terms of the messaging, I think we can really benefit from that in terms of the ROI with respect to the dollars that are being spent. So I think this raises a tremendous opportunity for us to work together to focus on which are the consumers and what is the correct message that has to go out to them. And I think it's an exciting time, and I think you're absolutely right in terms of mobile. I think we haven't even scratched the surface yet of the opportunity with mobile, because more people are accessing the internet via their mobile phone than the computers, the PCs, if you will. So we haven't done a good enough job yet in terms of leveraging that opportunity. But I do believe that this accountability and reaching the consumer when and how they want to is part of that integrated offering that we have to use to get to those various consumers. So it's really an exciting time to be in our business and to really gain market share.
Absolutely. And I think another very important aspect of how marketing is changing is, I think, a sharper focus around shoppers rather than just consumers. Because I think thus far, there were the marketing folks whose job was to talk to consumers. And there was the guys who did sales whose job was to provide products to retailers. And I think what is changing now is that the job is to ensure that you market your brands to shoppers, wherever they are. They happen to be on the internet, how do you market it to them? Okay? And I think it's a really big mind shift that has to take place in the way companies are getting organized to talk to consumers, which also happen to be shoppers in different places.
So you've done a tremendous job. You mentioned it before. In particular, in India, there are markets that are dark, that don't have access. And you've done a tremendous job in terms of marketing in that environment. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we have Project Shakti, where we have trained 45,000 impoverished rural women to really do two things. One is carry the message of hygiene and nutrition in schools and homes, and at the same time do a business, which is sell our brands.
Right.
Okay, and again, a little bit of a small aside. You know, when I joined the company as a marketing trainee 100 years ago, as you know, all of us were told to pick up our bags and go and sell, and not for a couple of weeks, but for several months. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you spend 6 to 9 months in the field. And I still remember the then marketing director of our company, at that time marketing controller, Mr. Shunu Sen, which I think all of you know, telling me the role of sales in India is very different, because the reach of our distribution reach is in fact wider and deeper than the media reach. Your job is to market these brands. So we used to sell during the daytime and show cinema vans and give the message of our products. Our job was to brand build, not just to go there. Now, of course, we've got media reach is much better, but we still have 300 million people who don't get reach. So we've got these 45,000 women. There are a lot of NGOs who are creating self-help groups. A lot of banks who want to give microcredit. What they lack is an income opportunity. Okay, someone to tell them what to do. And we come in there to really organize these women folk to sell our brands and teach them business. And what really, really amazes me, first of all, is how successful this has been. This is a very significant part of our growth. But importantly, when I